AI is something China believes, okay? The things that it can do to really compete with the United States. So AI is something that the Chinese will focus on for future competition with the United States. They know they're not going to win on semiconductor. They also know they will not be able to win on the currency war. As we have discussed in the last 2 to 3 sessions about the wars that have been waged between the US and China in relation to the currency as a reserve currency, that is renminbi versus US dollars. Right now, it appears that renminbi is losing the battle and the US dollar is winning, okay? And then, of course, semiconductor, it's going to be very hard for the Chinese to be able to catch up with what the U.S. is in control right now, and in terms of what it wants to do in the future, in terms of the fact that, as the film showed, that actually U.S. is doing everything that it can to subsidize the manufacturing be located in the United States, so that I don't think there's even a remote chance for the Chinese to be able to compete in the semiconductor area. Although they could, if they're lucky enough, they could find another way through which they can reach the same goal as the chips right now can do for purpose of what do they call that? Quantum computing, data processing, for which you will require very sophisticated chips to be able to operate and process those data and information, which the Chinese right now have been banned by the US to acquire. Not only the information, but also the technology as well as the chips themselves. So there's no way that they can compete, at least for the foreseeable future. In this particular area, so we have talked about currency war, we have talked about chip war, and today and the Chinese therefore know that at the moment, the only thing they can possibly compete with the US is artificial intelligence. Therefore, they are spending lots of money. They are spending lots of energies to compete with the U.S. Let's continue. So the key word for the artificial intelligence, okay, is algorithm. 我们叫演算法. I don't even know what that is because I have no technological background to be able to explain to you what the algorithm is. However, it appears to be the most important thing. It's somewhat of a software, okay, through which the human can carry on or carry out a dialogue with the software or artificial intelligence in such a way that the artificial intelligence understands what's being demanded, what's being required by the user of the computer or by the user of the artificial intelligence. So through this algorithm, okay, actually it's the real people, the human being, can communicate with the artificial intelligence. So therefore it is the backbone of everything when it comes to artificial intelligence, and that's the key point, or the most important thing that all the artificial intelligence engineers, okay, are working on, and to make it better, to make it more communicative, to make it a more self-learning, self-dissecting, self-analyzing procedure through which an outcome that is demanded by the user could come out. But in terms of the entire process, I have no idea. So you need to go on Google if you are interested. But it is a kind of method through which the people, the real human being, can ask or demand what the artificial intelligence is supposed to do. Okay, it's a set of formula and a combination of software and so on and so forth. There is a what do you call that? On Apple, there's somebody there that can talk to you. If you give him a command, what's his name or her name? 再讲一遍. Okay. Siri, yes, Siri. Okay. So this is artificial intelligence. Okay, the result or the outcome of artificial intelligence. Through that, you can communicate with it. That's the whole point. But it takes hundreds of thousands of engineers to come up with their software solution, so that you and Kiwi can what they call interface, okay, to generate the outcome the user would want. So that's the whole point. Let's continue. Based on what he just said, I mean, let's look at the situation that we are in, okay, from this Dalio's point of view, in terms of the fact that there are countries being defined as the rising power, there are countries being defined as the countries on the top, and there are also countries are declining countries, okay? Obviously, this guy is saying that, hey, we America, the US, okay, must stay on the top. So we're not supposed to going down, or else the Soviet will be declining so quickly. So in other words, I say, we don't know whether the US is a declining power. Perhaps it's still on the top, okay? But he's worried, okay? He is kind of desperate. He's kind of anxious to continue to stay on the top, so that he want to make sure it can nip it on the bud, 就是叫什么？那叫什么？防坏nip it on the bud, to make sure the Chinese will be falling behind when it comes to artificial intelligence, as well as semiconductor technology, as well as some of the monetary issues, okay, for which actually, if you really think about it, in terms of what the U.S. is doing to raise its interest rate, okay, one purpose for the U.S. to do it is to make sure that inflation rate goes down. But there could be other reasons, okay? Why? Because when they are, or after they have dropped their interest rate, the value of the US dollars goes up. That means all the value of the other currencies go down, including renminbi. So that to the extent that all the money are going to being converted into the US dollars and going to the US, that could mean that renminbi is still far way behind to the goal through which they want to be a kind of reserve currency to be able to compete with the US dollars, which from what's happening right now, there's no way that it can do it, because everyone, every country, every companies, every sellers and buyers involved in the international trade are thinking about, how do I do it a lot more quickly to convert my local currency into the US dollars. Through that process, all the assets of the countries in Asia, perhaps also in Europe, are being depreciated at the same time. In other words, I'm not an expert on economic theories, but this is something you may want to take a look in terms of the fact that U.S., in terms of what it's doing on its currency, it not only maybe in terms of its work on raising its interest rate, it could not only, okay, do something to improve their inflation rate, but also it could serve other purpose. For example, depreciating the renminbi value at the same time, which could give China a lot of problem when it wants to increase the volume of the international trade. And it will become more and more difficult for China because there are three things that China must do to keep growing to the extent that they can compete with the US. The first thing is world trade. It has to be a reasonably flexible world trade through which the Chinese can get a profit, which has been, right now, has been blocked, okay, by the US, okay. World trade, and secondly, real estate, which doesn't seem too good, doesn't seem too well in China. So they are, for that part, Chinese is getting into trouble. Whether there will be a solution, we don't know. We have to wait to see what has been discussed, what will be decided after the 20th the Chinese Communist Party meeting to be held in about a couple of weeks from now. So you will know what they intend to do to solve their problems in the area of real estate property being abandoned, being depreciated in China for the last, I don't know, six months. And one reason for that could be the fact that right now, because all those huge real estate developers in China, okay, they had borrowed lots of US dollars from the US investment bankers all through the years. Okay, the amount could reach zillions of dollars. And now you find a situation where the dollars have keep going up. Then it's going to be a lot more difficult for them to come up with enough US dollars to repay their creditors, who, according to their loan contract, require them to pay them back in US dollars. Okay, maybe that's also part of the reason for which all those real estate developers, especially those huge real estate developers, are right now in the process of going down. One reason could be the fact that they need to come up with a lot more money to be able to repay their debts in the US dollars to the US investment bankers who lend them the money in the first place. Okay, the three things that are critically important, okay, to be able to really for the Chinese to compete with the US. One is 5G technologies. That's for communication, fast, everything we talk about. When we talk about all these things, we talk about speed. You gotta have speed to be able to get it done. Okay, first of all, you have to be able to have the communication, fast communication ability, for which you requires 5G. Okay, 6G, 7Gs. Okay. And then you need to quick processing chips, okay? That's chips. You need to have very powerful chips to be able to process all such huge amount of data information being accumulated very quickly. Okay, so it is 5G chips and of course artificial intelligence. Okay, you gotta have all these three things to be able to stay on the top, which is the United States is trying to do at the moment. So it appears that we don't need to jump to conclusion too early, but it's likely, okay, the US could remain on the top, okay, or could protract its declining procedure, okay, and delay to God knows when, before the Chinese can become a rising power to outcompete with the U.S. It could still take some time because right now the Chinese is good, but it's not the best in artificial intelligence. But I mean, they are second or third or even the fourth in semiconductor, right? Right now, 5G, we don't know where Chinese are at the moment, knowing that Huawei had been, been I don't want to use the word beaten, okay. We don't know, okay. But Huawei had, the U.S. has frustrated, okay, all Huawei's attempts to become a key player in the 5G business. But there could be some other company which are good at 6G or 7Gs. But take Huawei as an example, the U.S. won't let that happen again. By that I mean, when it comes to 6G and 7Gs, there's no way the U.S. will allow the Chinese companies to be able, okay, to come and compete with the U.S. because after they have learned from their 5G experience, which really gave them a headache, okay, as addressed not only by Biden but also by Trump. Actually, it was President Trump who first, okay, raised the flag about the Chinese being able to catch up technologically, uh, uh, catch up from behind the U.S. So actually, you may like President Trump or you may not like him, but the fact of the matter, he was the first one who had raised the flag for the U.S., saying basically make America great again, so that we have to compete. We have beat the Chinese. We have to outcompete the Chinese. So on the other hand, we have talked about three things. Okay, the Chinese must do well, okay, to be able to compete. One is the real estate, which right now the Chinese are in trouble. And then, of course, the world trade, they're also in trouble. And the last thing is the domestic trade, infrastructure things. Let's see what's going to happen in terms of what they want to do to make sure they can come up with enough domestic spending to support a domestic economic development all by themselves without the real estate business or the world trade being there to give a helping hand. That's the guy. I mean, basically, he's saying what the Chinese government wants to say about how is it that the Chinese and the United States can work together, okay? Like the good old days, okay, during which, I mean, everybody makes lots of money and everybody becomes rich when both countries work closely together, okay? Basically, that's what he's saying right now. Say, we don't need to fight, we don't need to compete, because we can do something to make sure that we could both be mutually beneficial for the well-being of the people of both countries. Therefore, he's saying that that's actually what Wang Yi also had to say a couple of days ago in the United Nations Assembly thing. He's basically saying that let's don't fight. I mean, Taiwan is an issue, but is always an issue we can work out together. There's so many other issues, okay, we can work out together. You don't need to regard me as an enemy, so on and so forth, but that's too late, because the U.S. has right now regard China as it's one of the two major, I would even say, not only adversaries, but also enemies. Something the U.S. will try very hard for the next how many years, we don't know, to defeat, okay? That's something that the Chinese style will not be able to change. There's no turning back. If you really look at what's happening right now, if you want to go back to what had happened before World War II, okay, the Russian right now are like the Japanese being boggled down in China. They had their 3 million soldiers fighting here and there everywhere in China with the Chinese. On the other hand, they were I'm not using the right word, but they were not smart enough. They were stupid enough to come up with Pearl Harbor. Okay, they were already so busy with what they had been doing in China. Okay, waging wars here and there, in the north and the south and everywhere. Okay, I don't know, 1 million, 2 million, 3 million soldiers. Meanwhile, they plan on the creation of Pearl Harbor thing, which is very stupid. But there are people talking about why is it strategically. They weren't that smart. So right now, if you look at what's happening around the world, the U.S. is waiting because Russian is like the Japanese in mainland China before World War II, okay? And I think the U.S. is thinking, why don't we make the Chinese do what the Japanese did at Pearl Harbor in 1941? So let's wait and see if the Chinese were stupid enough to come up with its own Pearl Harbor to do something on the Taiwan Strait. Then we, as Americans, will really get back on our feet one more time because both the Russians and the Chinese will be in huge trouble and will not be able to compete with us anywhere around the world, one way or the other. I think maybe you should think about whether that's what's on President Biden's agenda in terms of what U.S. is doing right now all around the world. So in terms of at what time the Chinese will come up with its own Pearl Harbor, that's something we don't want to happen, but you can never exclude the probability that it might happen if the Chinese have been pushed into the corner, like the Japanese were before World War II. So I can't say it's a fun thing to watch, but it's an important thing that you should be able to draw your own conclusion. Okay, you don't need to make any prediction about what's going to happen, but you may want to think about under what conditions the Chinese Pearl Harbor might happen if based on the U.S. policy or what's going on the U.S. agenda that I have just described to you. That could be a fun thing to do. When I was young, there was a movie called War Games. It was released in 1984. It's a very old movie. At that time, people were, basically, the movie was basically telling the audience that, okay, computer will control everything, and the computer will make a decision for human being when it comes to whether, okay, a nuclear war should be launched, basically. But that's basically what he says, okay, in this film. And in that movie, okay, although at the end of the movie, everybody was happy. No war broke out, okay, and the computer, to a certain degree, has gone back to normal, okay, to do what it's supposed to do to help people work on voluminous data for the benefit of the human being, okay, and without making a decision for the user or human being. So if you have time, you can go back to take a look at that movie, although it is a quite old movie. But the fact of the matter, the other message that the movie will want to deliver is that there are certain people, okay, when they come up with their artificial intelligence or computer device, they always have self-serving interest, okay, to achieve without most people knowing it. And this self-serving interest will give humankind a huge trouble like what had been depicted in that movie. Okay, it will come up with a time that the human will have to listen what the computer has to say when it comes to the decision making, as this guy has just said. Let's go on with the Taiwan is important, but to what degree that the U.S. will sacrifice, okay, its own interest to come to the aid of Taiwan should anything happen. So another reason, if I may remind you of it, another reason for which the U.S. wouldn't want to sell F-35 to Taiwan is the fact that they are worried if Taiwan, for one reason or another, have lost its F-35 to the Chinese. What would have happened if the Chinese had gotten one of their F-35s? They would, I think what's on their mind, they don't want to lose all the most advanced technology that they have put on F-35. So for that reason, if there is a risk that F-35 might be stolen, okay, or robbed off by the Chinese communists, so they don't want to ship any of their 35 to Taiwan because there is a risk over there. So on the one hand, they want to keep Taiwan safe. On the other hand, I don't think they would want to sacrifice too much to their own detriment. But if there is there a line that you can draw to make a clear distinction between the two? I don't think anybody can do that, but because all these conditions are changing all the time, and especially in the next 3 to 5 years, if we talk about trade, talk about technology developments. Anything else? But I think Taiwan is, we should worry about Taiwan not only, militarily, but also economically, in the sense that Taiwan is getting more and more isolated in terms of the fact Taiwan is not a member of RCEP or CPTPP. Unless there is alternative that may come along quick, Taiwan going to be in big trouble, not in the field of IT business, but in traditional businesses that I would say 30% of the Taiwanese population depend on for their living. 他们就是传统产业有40%啊。There's no way that they can export, okay, because the custom duty will be 6%. 6%. There's no way that they can compete with the farmers in Vietnam or South Korea for agricultural products that they want to sell. So I think they will be in trouble. If 40% of the population will be negatively or adversely affected, then there's something we should worry about. But the only alternative we can think about is what do they call that? Free trade agreement between the U.S. to be signed, but I don't think that's going to happen. But there could be something there to serve a portion of the purpose that a free trade agreement can do. But an all-out free trade agreement, that's not going to happen very quickly. It may not even happen at all. We don't know. But I think that's the only solution that will help Taiwan relieve some of the tension that may escalate in the future for purpose of agricultural and some other traditional businesses that we do here on Taiwan, so that we can take care a portion of our population and their well-being, so that they can make a relatively easy, satisfactory living, which I don't think will be easy. Anybody who want to